start, and we should be good to go here in a minute. I'm trying to plug in my mic. I never unplugged it last week. Half the time I don't do that. So we're on the air on that. So well, it's not bringing you up. Come on. What happened? Why did you not bring it up? Okay, there it says we're live. We're back. Okay. Okay, we don't have nobody watching, but I do know we have people in the Meadville area listening. I don't know what happened to my grandson. He was supposed to be here. The Hell Party people.
Hello, party people.
Yeah, grandson is supposed to be here, but we just called him about 4:30 to make sure, and he said he was, but
maybe he got his thumb stuck in his butt.
well, maybe, or else he's getting a bowl of ice cream up there at the house.
Ice cream?
Yeah, ice cream, you scream, we all scream for ice cream. But anyway, I know there's nobody watching us, but now we got somebody else. We got up to 2. So the ding bings are getting out there.
Bing bing.
Yeah, okay guys. Those of you in the Meadville area that are listening on the radio, I want to thank you. My son works at the steel store downtown here, selling specialty steel to the tool and die shops. Was telling me that every time somebody calls in there from one of the tool shops, they ask him, is the old man still around? And he goes, yeah, he's glad to hear he's got the radio station back up and running. We listened to his show, and I won't mention which shop it is, but the owner of the shop that Bones works for, he listens all the time.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. So, if you're listening with what's going on out there, not being able to do any gun shows, that's put me in a real pickle. Okay. So, anyhow, what I'm basically saying is, I know I'm going to get a relief check, but that ain't going to go very far, not with the taxes coming through like they did. And so, again, most of my relief check, sharp pain. Most of my relief checks going to pay unpaid medical bills so that we can still get doctored.
Yeah.
Okay. As far as my regular bills, I'm pretty well caught up on them. But the taxes are the lag, and because of the type of winter we've had, I have a wood-burning stove that we heat with. Okay. But it doesn't work very effectively after 40 degrees. And when it gets higher than 40 degrees, it has a tendency to want to clog the chimney. Okay, so with this weather like it is, we haven't been able to use it to heat like we should. I've got the wood, but it just doesn't want to burn right, if you know what I'm saying.
Certainly.
The colder it is, the better the draw, the cleaner the burn. It burns out the tar pitch and whatever the sap that's in the wood. And burns it up because it's hot enough. But when it gets up to 40 degrees for an indoor stove, it doesn't burn as well. So anyway, we've been having to rely on our electricity, and we are. Well, I just paid him $157. Nope, I paid him $160. I paid a little extra, but that still leaves me $300 behind. I've used $300 more in electricity than my budget is
Because of it.
because of it.
Because of
So
what it is.
yeah. So I don't want to sound like I'm crying or begging, but if there's anybody out there that can help. Well, Mr. Jones is here, Bart's here, Emmy's here. So our basic core is here. That's good. That gives us six people. So yeah, we're on tonight because we have a lot of stuff to go around with, and the number of infections in Crawford County is at 5, and it's been that way for about 5 or 6 days now.
At least, about
Okay, so
upwards of a week.
yeah, so that means that there's no reason to panic yet.
And also, from what I understand, is the cases that have been the people that did test positive, they figured they contracted it outside the area,
Mm-hmm.
and when they came back, at least that's what I understand.
Yeah, and hopefully they didn't contaminate anybody, but that's why you got the 14-day quarantine
Mm-hmm.
and that, so. Anyway, that's where we're at with this. Now, I have a lead-off story. I'm going to do it because I want to get right into this crap. Because we have some more problems with Adam Schiff, for a Democrat from California, a representative who happens to be chairman of the Intelligence Committee in the House of Representatives. And one of his jobs as being the head or the chairman is to oversee all the threats to the national security that are being, that they're being advised on. Well, his zeal to find something to impeach Trump on, the intelligence of the coming through the country about this coronavirus went unnoticed. Now, the only reason I'm bringing this up is, well, let me read the story and then we'll go into it. Representative Doug Collins, Republican from Georgia, says now isn't the time for a 9/11 style independent commission to investigate Trump's response to the coronavirus pandemic, as Representative Adam Schiff, Democrat from California, is demanding. In an interview with Fox and Friends, the Georgia congressman well, anyway, the Georgia congressman warned that Schiff may not like what such commission would find. I think there's going to actually be a look back here, and I'm not sure Adam Schiff wants to talk about, and that is China's role in this, and the fact that as Intelligence Committee chairman, he was so wrapped up in impeachment during when all this hit, that I'm not sure there's was a slow response on both sides because no one was looking at this, Collins said. Schiff led House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's partisan impeachment of President Trump, controlling the list of witnesses and their testimony. Collins said the California Democrat was so focused on the president that he was trying to do in the election that we were missing basically China's role and others. Now here comes Bones.
Oh, of course, I just locked the door.
Yeah, wouldn't you know it? I'm not sure he would like the outcome of this report any more than he did any of the other reports that he had this past year, Colin said. Well, I don't, so anyway, we don't need to go into all those pieces of detail because it boils down to Schiff is calling or pushing to have an investigation for Trump's handling of this coronavirus, which he missed as chairman of the Intelligence Committee in the House of Representatives because he was too busy, too preoccupied with trying to find something on Trump that he himself, along with other members of Congress, allowed this information to slip through, and therefore Trump's response was slow because of misinformation or the lack thereof of information, which means you can't blame him. You have to blame the intelligence source where the information is coming from. And that number one chairman of that should have been, or should be, Alan Schiff, Democrat from California. Repeat that. Schiff, Democrat of California. If anybody needs to be investigated on this, it's him, and he needs to be removed. But being as Democrat, we know they won't do that. So, hi, Bones.
Hello.
What took you so long?
I got held up at Junior's house.
Oh, you did?
I would have been here sooner, but
You didn't get your ice cream then.
no, I did not.
That means more for me the next time.
Yeah.
By the way, Bones the Bludgeoner has now a new weapon in his repertoire of blunt instruments to bludgeon things to death. He now used a file to bludgeon a mouse that was stealing his cookie.
Very true. The top of my toolbox.
Yeah, turn your mic on.
My mic is on. On the top of my toolbox, oftentimes I'll take and
You gotta
put
get
the leftovers of my lunch that I didn't get to up there for whenever I get munchies or whatever. And left that overnight, and I come into work and set my keys and my phone up there, and lo and behold, a mouse is up there eating on one of my cookies, and he jumped down and hid behind my toolbox. So I called over another fella and had him push it to me, and I cracked it over the head with a file. And this guy freaked out. He goes, "You monster! You cold-blooded killer!"
Savage. So you're still working?
Yep.
Good. Good. I was.
Well, maybe not after using a file to kill a mouse. They may throw his file away.
Workplace violence.
We were laid off for 1 day. Friday they said that, because this was right when the governor had shut down all businesses, all of them, except the non-essentials. And it was the Monday that they were going to start sending out the state police to enforce that. And Friday we had a meeting and they said, listen, I'm staying open as long as I can. I think there's enough loopholes where we can stay open. And he says, I'm staying open until they come to shut me down. And even then, I'm still going to fight them. So I told them that I was going to do right by them, and I was just going to keep coming.
What kind of stuff do you make on your machinery? Like, or your, I know you work tool and die, but like.
So I do a lot of die plates, and I do a lot of tent plates. Like the last 3 days, we were doing production work for emergency tents that are going to be sent to New York to build emergency hospitals.
Neat.
Other times we make die plates for medical parts. Sometimes we make parts that go to machines that make medical parts. I mean, we do a lot of stuff.
I got you.
So basically, they're on the fringe element of essential businesses.
Yeah.
Because without the parts, the machines that make the other things can't work.
The things that make the things that make the things that can't.
You know?
The thingamajigs.
The feeding chain.
So recently, I was making some parts on the manual machines, not the CNC machines, that were sensor brackets for General Electric. And from my understanding, it's the General Electric Medical Division.
I gotta interrupt. Braveheart says hello to the serial bludgeoner of small animals. So, anyhow, That's good that you're doing that, because as Trump says, we need to keep the people working. If you don't have the people working, then when they become, the economy will slide into the abyss even further, and it makes it even tougher to bring it out when all said and done. Which brings me, I have a story here. Let me find it. It's put out by Rush Limbaugh. And with my voice failing, I'm going to find it and have someone needs to fight over.
Nope.
Fight over which one.
Ain't a big bag of crap. I ain't doing it.
You know,
Bag of crap.
you're going to do it, or I'm going to sit
bag of
on
crap.
your face and fart.
I've been in the same tent with you. I've had that experience before.
Come on, where did it go?
Can't even find it.
Damn. I know I pulled it up. Anyway, it was by Rush the Crush Limbaugh, and he had a bunch of statistics about just what was the top killing virus so far this year.
I know which
Here it is.
that story you're talking about.
Yeah, here it is. Who wants to read it?
I'll read it.
And,
All right. A shocking list of what's killed the most people in 2020 by Joe Kovacs. According to this, coronavirus is at bottom of list compared to everyday killers. Okay. Well, part of this is, with millions of Americans concerned about coronavirus, radio host Rush Limbaugh is providing some perspective on the actual number of fatalities from COVID-19 compared to those from other causes. On his Wednesday broadcast, Limbaugh cited a list from worldometers.info that rounded up the worldwide deaths from January 1st through March 25th of 2020. Coronavirus has 21,000 deaths, seasonal flu 113,000, malaria 228,000, suicide 249,000, traffic fatalities 313, almost 314,000 deaths, HIV/AIDS 391,000 deaths. Is the government overreacting to the coronavirus pandemic? Alcohol-related deaths 581,000, smoking-related deaths 1,162,000, cancer deaths 1,909,000 deaths, deaths attributed to starvation 2,382,000 deaths, and death by abortion 9,900,000. Limbaugh explained, I'm not trying to make any correlation. I'm not trying to say, hey, we're overreacting to coronavirus death. I'm just giving you the stats here. You can react to these stats however you wish. He added, you still have some really shocking numbers because we don't talk about it. We get suicide hotlines. We try to teach people to drive safely. We do whatever we do with HIV/AIDS. We tell people to drink responsibly, tell people not to smoke, try to devise cancer treatments, try to feed people. Limbaugh even mentioned efforts in his hometown of Palm Beach, Florida. The town website where I live is chiding people for being on the beach, for standing too close together while their dogs are pooping. I mean, you wouldn't believe it. I've seen it all. Quick, fast, and in a hurry.
so, is the administration and the world reacting overly cautious? I don't know. I do know that the majority of the deaths are hitting the group of the age group of 60 or older, and those that have health issues, even ones that are younger than 60 that have health issues. And you see them advertising it on TV all the time what the issues are. So I'm not going to go over that, but the thing of it is, my son and I were talking, and over the years, I've been talking about how you want to take a look and see if there's anything you want to read.
I actually have a couple questions about what Scott just read.
Okay, go ahead and I'll go with both of us.
I'm curious about those statistics and whether were those worldwide statistics?
Yes.
Or
Yeah.
that's what I kind of figured, because those numbers seem awfully large for just the United States.
Yeah, it came from worldometers.info, so I'm guessing it's...
Because when you compare those numbers to 320 million people compared to 7 billion people, that does make
It does skew the ratios and the averages.
and then
all
you
that.
have to think about where these numbers are coming from. You know, in third world countries, of course, those people clearly don't have the best health care and things like that, not access to clean food and water, and that's why there are so many deaths from just the average typical seasonal flu, because while yes it kills 11,000 people in this country, in Timbuktu out in Africa it kills 90,000 people because they're just not healthy to begin with.
Well, that, and as I was alluding to, you got another question, or was that it?
Well, I think the question of asking whether those were worldwide statistics, which they were, it leads to, while there are that many deaths from all those other things, when you divide it up and you look at it, like on a per capita basis, those are clearly much lower. Now, of course, we don't want anybody to die in a perfect world, but I mean, reasonably, in every country around the world, you have a low percentage of the population that drinks and drives and dies, or shoots themselves, or does this, that, and the other thing, and people die. I mean, it's just
Well, I
that's
think,
the way the country crumbles. But I think that the thing that we're looking at now is that with the coronavirus, I don't think that they're underestimating it or that they're overreacting at all. I think this whole time we did nothing but underestimate it, blow it off, play it off, and now that it's blowing up and we don't have, even in a first world country with some of the best healthcare in the world, we pioneered the medical industry, and the rest of the world copies us.
when you're talking about it being blown off, yeah. Unfortunately, people are going to blame Trump because he's president. But the reasons for his lack of inactivity at first, okay, is not because he didn't care. It's because the people that are supposed to provide him with the information and advise him with the information so that he can make a intelligent decision did not give him the information.
Right.
It was either deliberately withheld or whatever, and I'm thinking it was deliberately withheld because this plays into some of the things that we've been talking about in the past.
So this starts at the bottom and it goes to the top, and then they're going to push it on him. I get that, but my point is I think that the response in the beginning was not proportional to the threat, and that's because. But even now, I still don't think that we're taking this seriously enough. I mean, even the place that I work for, we practice social distancing and we do this, that, and the other thing, and we have certain policies, but I don't think it's enough. I don't think that anything that we're doing right now, on a business level, on a state level, across the nation, is actually doing enough to combat it.
You as an individual can take any of these advisories that they give you and take it further. Well, yeah, you can, but you can further defend yourself without having to be officially told that you need to wear a mask. Okay? You shouldn't have to be told that you need to wash your hands. If you're working with stuff where you may come in contact with it because of your hands, you wear gloves, plastic gloves or rubber gloves so that it doesn't penetrate. Then you throw them away. There are things that you as an individual can do that will enhance what the government's trying to do, because the government is frontline response to the hot spots, trying to stop it from going there. But for years, the United Nations has been trying to figure out ways to depopulate the earth by 3/4, 75%. There has been outbreaks of certain deadly type diseases. And when they see how it has started to grow out of control, all of a sudden they seem to have a vaccine for it. Um, Mainly the two biggest ones in the fairly recent history has been HIV virus, AIDS. Okay, they claimed it originated from Africa. So until it started to hit here in the United States or elsewhere, there wasn't too much concern because it was an African disease. Okay, but once they found that it was not just Africans that had it, it was being spread by homosexual contact among men. They finally come up with a vaccine, which now you don't hardly hear anything about AIDS whatsoever. It's called HIV, but you don't hardly hear anything about that. But then they come up with Ebola. They've had a couple outbreaks with Ebola over in Africa. Okay, and it seems strange that they were able to stop it over there before it got here. But it all plays into what they're doing. They're working on designer viruses designed to attack certain populations and ethnic groups. You follow what I'm saying? So they will only affect this type of person. Okay? Just like this coronavirus is extremely deadly to the senior population. And why would they want to kill off the senior population? Because they are no longer the productive part of society. They worked there 40, 50 years to get to retire. They're useless in their eyes. Okay? So, in order to save our money and keep from going broke, we're going to get rid of the senior population. And well, how do you do that? You develop a virus that is going to kill certain people with certain issues. Like I said, designer viruses. Is that what's going on here? Could that very well be what's going on? China's experimenting with it over in China to get rid of the useless people in their population? And I really shouldn't say senior citizens are useless, because they've done their share to build this country and deserve to have a decent lifestyle after they are retired. But this is this a first step in euthanasia, where you kill off certain population?
What I call it, eugenics?
Yeah, okay. We know that this virus is deadly to people over 65, especially if they have heart condition, diabetes, immune deficiency syndrome, and there was another one, I can't think of it right now. And that's what's heavily involved in the senior citizen group, because they're elderly and their systems are breaking down. And yes, they are sick, and yes, they are taking a lot of supposedly resources, depending on how you want to look at it. But it doesn't stop with just them. It will make the younger generation sick. And if that member of that younger generation has one of the 4 major health issues, they're going to fall into the same boat as the senior citizen, okay, that is dying, because they have the underlying issues that they do, and they found that it is deadly. So, I know none of the experts will come out and say it, and none of them ever will come out and say it, but I don't think Trump really, personally, as the president, underestimated the seriousness. Any underestimate of the seriousness of this problem comes from the fact that he was not briefed properly. Information was withheld from him, and he made decisions based on faulty information, which you cannot blame him for doing. Now, I know people are going to say, well, he should have known. Well, how's he going to know if the people that are supposed to give him the information don't give him the right information? Okay? It's like you going in and making a part, and they tell you, you got to make this part, but they don't give you the information on how to make it. Okay?
Well, that actually happens quite a bit.
I know, but, okay, so you follow what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Okay?
A lot of times of times we have a lot of angry calls with engineers that don't understand that their prints are garbage or.
Well, I've always said, it's getting a little bit off target, but I've always said that anybody that goes to college, before he can get his college degree, he needs to go out and work in the field for 2 years. And I'm not talking about just in working and designing it, but taking that design and going down to the machine shop and milling it and making it and then put it to what it's supposed to fit. Okay? So, because you see, there's all kinds of screw up shit going on out there, especially in the car manufacturing and that.
I got a little story about something just like that.
Yeah.
When I worked at the U.S. Bronze, I worked on what's called the burr bench. We did the finishing. These monstrous bronze parts, they would go through all the machining, and then they come to us, and we'd have to polish them to a certain degree of shine or whatever. It had a little gauge, and a lot of times it seemed like some engineer just flipped a coin. Oh, we'll go with a 15, whatever. Because I found out, like, some of these parts, I mean, and mind you, like, they're the size of small cars. When they get taken out, because like a lot of the parts are made for like rock quarries in mining operations, they get out on the back of a flatbed. To get them off the truck, they just take a forklift and just push it off the truck and roll it down the hill. So that 15 gauge shininess or whatever, I forget.
It's all scuffed up.
Yeah, it'd be kind of pointless, you know.
Yeah.
That idiot just, it needs to be this. No, it doesn't.
We got a email. We got a chat from a message from Louis Boyce. It says, "Hello, Braveheart. I don't recognize the name Louis. Have you been a long term? And somebody said, welcome back. Where you at?" Just so I know, who you are. Make sure I know who I'm talking to. Doesn't mean I will, but just something. But yeah, it's this coronavirus you have to pay attention to, and I am practicing social distancing as much as I possibly can. Okay, and because I think it's my patriotic duty not to take and contact that and spread it to other people unknown. But I do have an axe to grind with the Californicators. Out in, I believe it was Los Angeles, about 450 Los Angeles from this one neighborhood, or one block, decided to have a block party. So there's 450 of them out there dancing in the street, playing music and cooking off of barbecues, okay, when they were supposed to be social distancing. 450 on one block.
Just like those idiots on, down spring break, that countless numbers of them are starting to test positive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, that's how that one first case in Erie got there. He was down there for spring break. Young people, you got to remember, it may not be deadly to you, it may make you sick, and you are contaminant, and you can transfer that to elderly people. Now, elderly people very well could fit as your grandmother, grandfather, mother, father, okay, and so on. And your brothers and sisters if they have an underlying health issue. So this is the time not to be a me generation and I don't give a shit, go out and do what I want to do anyway. It is a time to work together and a war footing to stop this from becoming a major disaster. Does it have the propensity to do that? From what I see, it does have that potential. But on the same token, I know New York City's up there hollering, we don't have enough beds, we don't have enough beds, we don't have enough beds. Well, you have 4 hospitals that you closed down. Okay, they were closed down before this virus because of budget woes. Have you opened those 4 hospitals up? I haven't heard anything as to whether they have or not, but I know the feds sent a ship, a hospital ship, and they're sending mobile hospitals, tents and supplies, And we did have, where's that list of stories? Did have, I'll find it here, to show you how people are in this country. Here it is. I'll see if I can wade through it. It's really not that long.
One of the things kind of going along with what we were saying is, prior to January, beginning of the year, and mind you, I work in the healthcare industry. I never heard of this coronavirus. So my question is, it's rhetorical. How many coronavirus, COVID-19 pandemics are out there right around the corner, and some of them kick off corona, other ones don't. So to say we're not doing enough, but with that being said, if we took every single threat and did 100%, we'd all be living in our basements, hiding. I mean, sometimes you just have to kind of see what happens. And
hiding in the corner with a flamethrower to cook anything that comes in the window.
I think you're right. I think you're 100% right. We can't live our lives shut in like what the president's saying, what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, when things do start to happen, there is the potential for things to grow out of control. We need to strap down and do what we have to do to keep the population healthy.
Roger that.
Which is what I think I think we didn't do. When this stuff all started in China, and China started covering everything up, I don't understand how. And this goes back to the intelligence failure. China is constantly fucking with us, spying on us, stealing our information, pirating, doing all this. We're spying on half the rest of the world, half of our own people. How do we not know what's going on in China? Whether, it takes one spy plane, one mission. We fly over, we see the crematoriums, we go, yep, they're dying in droves. Close the fucking borders, stop the flights. How, honest to God, did we not realize that things were as bad as they were in China?
Well, first of all, number one, you hit on the key point to start with. The Chinese hid the fact. They hid the fact for a couple of months before it started to get out of control. Okay, but let me tell you, you have to understand the basic mindset of the Chinese, the Oriental mind. Growing up after World War II, not knowing much about Korea, but Vietnam, and seeing the Oriental mind in Vietnam and the mindset. Human life means nothing to them, okay? Because there are so many of them. China has over 1 billion people. They could stand to have some virus come through there and kill 500 million people and still come out ahead, okay? They would think they were better off because they got rid of 500 million people. But like I said, I think this was a attempt to see how far this would go and see if it would affect the population that they were wanting to target, which I do believe, because of the fact that it is so deadly to the senior population, that it was designed to knock off a lot of the senior
I don't
population.
think it was designed specifically. I think it's just a consequence of the fact that it's an illness.
It's an illness, but it was a designed illness.
Right,
Okay?
and I agree with you. I think it was designed to go after the parts of the body that it does, but I think as a consequence, because you're all old, you just die from that.
Well, you die from it when you got the flu. Okay?
Right.
Because the same underlying conditions with the flu for the flu is the same as the underlying conditions for the coronavirus. Heart problems, respiratory problems, diabetic, immune deficiency. If you have all of those, or any combination of those when these viruses come around, because basically, if you've been following this information, the coronavirus is nothing more than an enhanced form of the flu.
I don't believe that.
And that.
I think it's so much more.
And, well, it is, because it has been It's been altered. That's why I said enhanced form of the flu. Enhanced means they've altered it to make it
More
deadly.
deadly.
Yeah. Back to the designer. You've heard
Everybody
of,
just calling it the flu makes it seem like, oh, well, I'll just go
Yeah.
down and party over spring break and catch the flu, and
Mhm.
I won't die, nothing will happen to me, and then it grows out of control, and the government does nothing because, well, we didn't even know what was going on in the first place, and so now there's a pandemic. Everybody stay in your fucking home.
Well, yeah, what I'm trying to tell you is you're right on some of this stuff because the kids didn't stay at home. As far as the government not doing anything, when Trump was finally got the right information, he started doing things, and when he did, he was called racist.
Well,
Okay,
one,
then
that's
then
because
when
the
he
Chinese specifically did that. The Chinese realized what an absolute storm they created, and they're looking for anything to get the attention
but
off of
they're
them.
not the ones that called him racist. It's people in our own country that called him racist
Well,
because
kudos to the
Congress,
communists
because
yeah,
Democrats
they got us
because
to fight each other instead of fighting them.
yeah, okay, so.
Because it was Chinese state-run media that
Well,
started the
the-
whole racist thing, and then of course the Democrats saw it and they're like, well, we have to
Okay.
do this.
And then the press here, if you've watched very many of his press conferences, the press here has been wasting his time and their time calling him to task on this confounded name of this virus. Why do you call it Chinese virus? Because it came from China. Okay, what do you want to call it? The Himalayan virus because it came from China? Okay, it came from China. There's no racist connotations mentioned insinuated. It came from China, so therefore that's the name it got. Okay, swine flu. The reason the swine flu got the name of swine flu because it came from pigs. Okay, so the name is irrelevant at this time. Getting the treatment to treat it and stop it is the relevant thing. All this other shit, window dressing or whatever, can be done after you've got the thing licked. So, but to show you how, give you a perfect example of how some of this stuff has, the shortages have been artificially created. I have a story here that was on the internet this week. Feds handing out medical supplies taken from hoarders. This is off of WorldNet Daily. And federal officials at the Department of Justice and Health and Human Services say they are now distributing some of the personal protective equipment that they took from hoarders who had accumulated the supplies, likely in hope of reselling at a huge profit. The supplies were handed out in New York and New Jersey and included almost 200,000 N95 respirator masks, officials said in their report on the situation. The FBI had found the supplies during an enforcement operation of the Department of Justice 19. Hoarding and Price Gouging Task Force on March 30th and alerted HHS, which uses its authority under Defense Protection Act, DPA, to order the supplies be immediately furnished to the United States. Besides the masks, there were 598,000 medical grade gloves, 130,000 surgical masks, procedures masks, N100 masks, surgical gowns, disinfectant, and so on. Everything you need to fight whatever. If you are missing critical medical equipment for the purpose, if you are amassing critical medical purpose for the purpose of selling it at exorbitant prices, you can expect a knock on your door, said Attorney General William P. Barr. The Department of Justice Corona-19 Hoarding and Price Gouging Task Force is working tirelessly around the clock with all our law enforcement to ensure that bad actors cannot illicitly profit from the Corona-19 pandemic. Okay, so part of the reason that there has been some shortages. Not all the reason, but some. Number one is because people are hoarding it, waiting till the pandemic gets really bad and then figure they can sell it for 10 times what they paid for it. Profiteering. In World War II, you could go to jail for that. In foreign countries, especially like under the Japanese and the Germans and the Russians, you tried to do that. You didn't go to jail. You did not pass go. You went down to the nearest open field and they put you in a ditch. But we're a little more civilized than that. So, but 2016, the mayor of New York, which I think is now the governor of New York, or maybe it's the mayor of New York.
De Blasio's the mayor of New York
Yeah.
City.
And
Cuomo.
is the
Governor.
Yeah. Okay, one of those two had an opportunity to get 14,000 respirators to build up their stockpile with. Okay, and they turned them down. They have several hospitals at the outbreak of this that have been closed down because they were in neighborhoods of the city that were not very wealthy neighborhoods, okay? So all of a sudden now you got this outbreak and they're crying for more supplies. Well, unfortunately in New York, part of the problem is your problem because you created it. And the other part of the problem is you're just one of the cesspools that we're having to deal with that's got the outbreak. So whatever we can come up with has got to be rationed out as much as it can be to the different spots. And where was it? I just saw in the news last night. One of the small town hospitals had like 14 respirators not being used. And it was up in New York, come to think of it. And they
One of the questions I
then
have,
took them and, sent them to the hospitals that need them.
one of the questions I have, one of the many questions is, I see this Cuomo talking all day long about the respirator shortage. Respirator shortage. We don't have enough. My question is, how many do you is every respirator in New York State being used? How many are there still there? All we hear is the negative. We don't hear about the people that tested positive and then got better. What percentage of people that test positive for the coronavirus need to be put on a respirator? What percentage? These are the questions I have that aren't even being talked about because it doesn't make good news.
Well, yeah, it doesn't make good news, and it is a valid question. What percentage need it? Now, the ones that are in the beginning stage need it, or the ones that are really having respiratory problems and not being able to breathe, or they're the ones that need it and not getting it? You know what I'm saying?
Certainly.
Because they're now getting to the point where they're saying shortly we're going to have to decide between those that will benefit and those that are not going to benefit. The only benefit they're going to be is prolonging their life until they die. So, if they're going to die, let's not waste that ventilator on them and put it to somebody that's got a better chance of surviving.
Yes.
Okay? And, so,
So, the question that I have is when we talk about ventilators and respirators, are we talking about the same thing? Because a ventilator is a machine that breathes for you. A respirator, those are just the masks.
mask,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, the N95 mask is like your standard styrofoam mask. It's got a little filter in it.
Yeah.
Surgical mask is the ones you tie on and you can throw. You see them at the hospital. The ventilators are the ones that your tube.
You see the round,
Right, and that's
the
what
round
physically
tube
keeps
with
the
the
patient alive.
yeah, with the bellows in it, and it goes up and down. That's what's keeping the patient alive, because it's forcing the oxygen into their lungs, which then, with the oxygen going to the brain, it keeps the heart working, which keeps the blood circulating, so they can pick up more oxygen and circulate around. The question is that's been starting to creep up is when do you draw the line? Where do you draw the line? Okay, just like up in New York, the first responders, the ambulance drivers and crews, okay, they have been told that if a person is, if you get a call, emergency call to a residence and the person is in cardiac arrest and cannot be revived, just leave them there. Don't bother taking them to the hospital. Just leave them there. Then the family can get a hold of the morgue, and the morgue can come and get them, or a mortuary, funeral home, and they can come and get them. To a certain extent, I agree with that. But on the same token, I disagree with that fact just because of one simple thing. If he died from cardiac arrest, was that brought on by an infection of coronavirus that nobody caught? Okay, in which case you're leaving it there to manifest. Anybody comes in that's not prepared to deal with it, you know, you're creating another exposure. Instead of being taken care of the first time, disinfect everything, and that way you leave it. And then the next group of people come in, they may get exposed to it. So now you have two groups of people getting exposed to it instead of just one. A lot of times this stuff sounds good, but it's not really the practical thing to do. And so anyhow, got all kinds of people here. Emmy said she's glad we're back because she missed us last week. Well, we're glad we're back, but I was playing it kind of cautious last week, Emmy, because the number was starting to creep up. But since last week, the number is stabilized here, so I figured I will stay here for a while longer unless it starts to expand.
I think we have 6 cases confirmed in Crawford County. They don't tell you where, but Meadville's kind of dead in the middle anyhow. So.
Well, last
I'm assuming
number I knew was 5. And that was as of yesterday.
But we got 6 today.
Got number 6 today. Okay. And then so, but it's a slow creeping number because we're not having 4, 5, 6 people a day. We're just getting one every 4 or 5 days. Okay, which means
we had weeks in between. Like, we got our first one, then it went 2 weeks, we got our second, and then we got one more, and then one more after that, and then there was a week or so.
Well, before this one of them was supposed to have been some medical personnel that had to go out of the county to do some work, but I don't know whether she was working for one of the hospitals or if she worked for some other type of facility or whatever.
Well, there was one staffer in Meadville Medical that had it. I know that for sure.
But from what I understand, that person wasn't a medical staff. It was a
patient.
No, not a patient. It was an employee of Meadville Medical Center, but it wasn't like a doctor or a nurse or a healthcare provider. You know,
Right.
It was one of the auxiliary. You know, the way they. I'm led to believe it was probably like, say, a maintenance type person. It was probably, you know, because the Titusville Hospital is now part of Meadville Medical Center, and there's other smaller hospitals out there. So that would be my guess. But it's also suspicious that, like, the day after they announced that there was a Meadville Medical Center employee that tested positive, they announced there was like 100 and some people being furloughed from the hospital.
Oh, yeah.
So
Yeah,
I just, like,
200 people ended up getting laid off because there wasn't enough people coming to the hospital or something like that.
well, there's
This was in the Tribune.
all of the elective surgery has been canceled. You know, a lot of doctors, most doctors' offices are canceling appointments unless it's life-threatening. Like, a lot of the home health care people are picking up the slack. Like, for instance, my department manager, her mother or mother-in-law gets allergy shots in the doctor's office. The last time she was there, sent her home with the shot because she could go over and give the shot. He didn't want her coming into the office.
Check your phone for the YouTube feed and see if we're putting something out, because somebody Bob sent us a message. The Cheetos in Chiefs YouTube channel is streaming nothing. So we might be talking on a subject that's too hot for them to handle. And so I just want to know if there's anything going over the airways to be sure.
Yeah.
Unless
I'm getting.
you getting it?
Yep.
Okay. Well then, Bob, it might have been just a glitch at your part. Anyway. So anyhow, well, it is 6 minutes to 7. So I am going to have us take about a 6-minute break here, so we can rest our voices, and then we'll get back at this, and we'll go from there. Stay frosty, my friends. We'll be back in about 6.
Hello, everybody. My name is Scott Grinnell, and I love you.
Don't believe him, folks. He tells a lot of lies.
All fables. I am a genuine shithead. Just ask my mother. She'll tell you.
Anyhow, did you pick something out that you would like to cover?
Yeah,
or start?
sure. All right, CNN slammed Trump 4 weeks ago for saying exactly what they're claiming now. A study published Monday from the Lancet Infectious Diseases, a medical journal in the United Kingdom, found that the death rate for COVID-19 was significantly less than the 3.4% originally predicted by the World Health Organization. The news wasn't particularly surprising. The Lancet study put the death rate at 0.66%, higher than the seasonal flu, which kills 0.1% of people who get it, but still a lot less than what we had feared. The writing had been on the wall for weeks, as various studies had concluded that when mild or asymptomatic cases of coronavirus infection were taken into account, the death rate could be well south of 1%. This is cold comfort given the fact the United States is expecting upward of 100,000 deaths, but it gives us a better idea of what we're dealing with. On Tuesday, CNN reported on it, and why wouldn't they? Coronavirus death rate is lower than previously reported, study says, but it's still deadlier than seasonal flu. The article by Arman Azad was titled, "I shan't go into any particulars here, but suffice it to say that the title basically says what you need to know." This is interesting in as much as it stood in stark contrast to what Brian Stelter, professional fulminator and or host of CNN's Reliable Sources, was saying at the beginning of the month when he slammed President Donald Trump for even suggesting that the death rate might come in under the World Health Organization WHO estimate. Stelter's rant, titled "Trump Makes Spurious Claims About Coronavirus in Phone Call with Sean Hannity," it came after Trump phoned Sean Hannity's show on March 4th and said he thought 3.4% is really a false number. Now, this is just my hunch, Trump said, based on a lot of conversations with a lot of people that do this, because a lot of people will have this, and it's very, very mild. They'll get better very rapidly. They don't even see a doctor. They don't even call a doctor. You never hear about those people, so you can't put them down in the category of the overall population in terms of this corona flu and or virus. So you just can't do that. If we have thousands or hundreds of thousands of people that get better just by, sitting around or even going to work, some of them go to work but they get better. And then when they do have a death, like you've had in the state of Washington, like you had one in California, I believe you had one in New York. He continued, all of a sudden it seems like 3 or 4%, which is a very high number, as opposed to a fraction of 1%. But again, they don't know about the easy cases because the easy cases don't go to the hospital. They don't report to doctors or the hospital in many cases. So I think that the number is very high. I think the number, personally, I would say the number is way under 1%. Stelter's screed said the appearance was meant to give the impression of a man shaking with vehement rage in front of his MacBook. I hesitate to even print the United States President's words here because they are so at odds with what health experts are saying, Stelter wrote. But the President's statements to Sean Hannity are significant because millions of people were watching live. Stelter went on to say that Hannity televised Trump's irresponsible hunch to the world and was yet another person to spread the lie that Trump was discarding his own administration's advice to stay home if you're feeling sick. He very clearly said that people were going to work without knowing they had coronavirus, not that people should go to work if they don't know they had coronavirus. If you heard something different, you wanted to hear something different. It's been a long month, I know. What we know about coronavirus has significantly changed over the past 4 weeks. I don't think there's anyone covering this or writing about it that didn't have their preconceptions changed. That said, there's a certain consistency in the Stelterian worldview. It's difficult to take anyone seriously if they view President Trump handling of the coronavirus was with unmixed delight. Those who view it with unmixed rage, however, should be similarly discounted, and that's pretty much what Stelter has done since the moment the current president took office. Here's a recent set of Stelter headlines which require no further context from the article itself to tell you where this guy's head is right now. April 1st, journalists challenge Trump's revisionist history regarding coronavirus response. March 30th, Trump is self-isolating at his safe space, Fox News. March 30th, as coronavirus death toll rises, Trump focuses on a different set of numbers, TV ratings. March 25th, how the Fox News presidency has politicized a national health crisis. Politicizing a health crisis, completely unlike what's going on in CNN. So the facts may change, but the Stelterian outlook never does. All right, you're saying, but can you hold Stelter and CNN accountable for what they said when the death rate was, as Donald Rumsfeld might have put it, a known unknown? Yes, the problem with Stelter's original attack was a question of asymmetric information. Bluntly put, the president knew more about the virus than he did. I know this probably comes as a shock to Stelter, a man who seems to view the president as an adult infant with a television turned to Fox News and a cell phone with the Twitter app permanently open. However, Stelter kept sticking on the fact that Trump said the word hunch. What he probably should have looked harder at was the part where Trump said this was based on a lot of conversations with a lot of people that do this. Not the most elegant language, I admit, but this was something the president was being briefed on. When this is all done, I would be surprised to find out he didn't have some idea of the limits of testing as well as the limits of the WHO's model. There's also the area of common sense. If testing is limited and there's a cohort of people who have mild symptoms or are asymptomatic, it only goes to reason that the WHO's 3.4% number was too high. This is just common sense. As for why Trump said what he did on Hannity, I have to admit that I don't know the chain of events that led to it. It's basically a priori hunch. Then again, what Brian Stelter had was a hunch too. He turned out to be wrong. A little less than 4 weeks later, his network published a story that proved Trump's hunch was correct. I'm just letting you know, since I don't think we're going to hear about it on reliable sources anytime soon. This article originally appeared on the Western Journal.
Got a question here. People want to know where Mr. T is. I talked to him this afternoon.
No, I'm going to tell the truth. I'm going to say where he is.
Yeah, where?
The coronavirus got into his Carhartt thong and he's chafing again.
Chafing again. Chafing again or chasing again? He called this afternoon about 4 o'clock. His daughter showed up this weekend from Pittsburgh, and she was wearing a face mask. And she's trying to get out of Pittsburgh until this coronavirus thing subsides. So he felt that since she showed up, that he should not take the chance on bringing that up here to us if she should have it. She so far doesn't have any signs of it or symptoms of it. It's just that she decided to get out of the Pittsburgh cesspool and get up to cleaner pastures or whatever.
And in so much as he lives a little ways away, he probably shouldn't be traveling anyhow. Just stay at home, hunker down.
Yeah. So, but anyway, that's where he's at. No, the bear didn't even get him. The bear's probably hibernating too, practicing social distancing because he doesn't want to get the coronavirus. Smart bear. Anyhow, this is another thing. This is showing how people who are ignoring the self-quarantining orders don't necessarily are not necessarily people that don't have the virus. This comes out of Kentucky. As bad as America's coronavirus 19 outbreak is, it remains a chance to set the United States apart from the world, to show that we can come together and defeat the virus while still maintaining the rights that made our country so unique. For the most part, that has been the case. American authorities haven't welded apartment blocks shut like those in China. Reportedly did. There has been no mass roundup of summary execution of the populace, like there has been in China. While Americans overwhelmingly reject the tyranny amidst the outbreak, Kentucky residents are now beginning to see another attempt to unsettle government control creep into their lives. According to Louisville Courier Journal, 2 Kentucky circuit court judges have used their power to tag and monitor infected people who have broken quarantine. Of the 3 people fitted with ankle monitors and ordered to stay home, 2 have tested positive for the coronavirus. The other individual does not even have a normal coronavirus, which is probably like flu or something like that, but is a family member of one of the infected Kentuckians. The individuals were ordered to wear ankle devices by judge after they were believed to have left their homes instead of self-isolating, and in one case checked out of the hospital after testing positive. Now these innocent people risk arrest if they break quarantine again. The move sets a shocking precedent, one that is seemingly unheard of in the United States, but appears to follow a Kentucky law that gives county health officials the power to enforce isolation in certain cases. The order was presented as being an appropriate measure for extreme circumstances, but it's shockingly authoritarian response to this crime. While the low-tech solution of an ankle monitor may seem scary, the real horror show starts when big tech steps in. So when they're talking about big tech,
This is
talking about your cell phones.
Information source, Crawford County EPA COVID-19 information. It's on Facebook.
They're talking about the cell phones reporting the data that where you go, what you buy, where you're at, how long you were there. They do that now. So, but here's the thing. If these 2 people tested positive, or 2 of the 3 people tested positive for the coronavirus, and they broke quarantine, then they should be forced quarantined. Okay?
Oh my.
They should be forced quarantined. Now, how do you do that? Well, okay, we emptied out all the jail cells. So they're not technically under arrest, but we're going to put them in a jail cell, and that's where they're going to stay until the doctors deem them clear of the virus and go home. Okay? All throughout this country, jails are dumping out people from the jail cells. It's time to start using those jail cells. Clear the whole block. Clear the whole block, fill up other blocks. But take that one block and start putting people in there that are tested positive but not necessarily sick, until such time as they come down with the symptoms or the 14-day quarantine period is over. And if they don't come down in that 14, well, then you just release them. No fuss, no muss. But I don't like to see that, because then that's authoritarianism.
Very much so.
But back when I was a young man, when I was in school, I got the mumps. Okay? And I was ordered to stay home. The schools were closed down because of the spread of mumps in the school. And when they said we could go back, we went back. I only got the mumps on one side. Okay? We went back to school about 6 weeks later. I get them again on the other side.
Oh, Jesus. I want to throw something out there before I forget. Anybody that's on Facebook within the listening radius, it's from Crawford County. There is a Facebook page called Crawford County PA COVID-19 information. They have question and answer sessions with like doctors and medical people, not just opinions. They're really cracking, because for a while there's like 7,000 or 8,000 people, members, and there was like a lot of opinions being bandied about, and they're like really cracking down. They're like, no opinions. If you don't know, shut your mouth. Let the doctors answer. And there's some highly respectable doctors that are answering questions, and they have live forums and stuff like that. So Crawford County PA COVID-19 information on Facebook. So with that being said, I take this off. It's getting hot in here.
Okay, what do we want to do now?
I want to get a drink of water.
Come on, get a drink of water.
You guys smoking those pipes dried out my throat, making me stink.
I'll tell you what, while you're dusting, give me a shot, and then why don't you do this show, that story?
All righty.
'Cause I think that shows how hypocritical they are. You got plenty of water, Raoul.
Yep, I fill up my 2-quarter. Well, in so much as I am a non-religious person, I feel almost hypocritical reading this, but with that being said, hell freezes over. MSNBC anchor asks pastor to pray on air. Okay, amid an unprecedented crisis, an MSNBC anchor stunned viewers with an unprecedented request, at least for his network. If they use unprecedented one more time, I'm going to lose my shit. Wrapping up an interview about the spiritual impact of the coronavirus on the nation, he asked a pastor to pray. For folks who aren't able to get to church yesterday, I've never actually done this on the air, said anchor Craig Melvin in an interview with Bishop T.D. Jakes. Can you lead us in prayer for 30 seconds? Blaze reported Melvin shocked viewers with his request of Jakes, a best-selling author, filmmaker, and megachurch pastor whose sermons are broadcast weekly. One moment, please. Jakes prayed, "Our Father and our God, we bow our heads to you in humility, understanding that we are not competent in and of ourselves to handle this kind of global calamity. We look to you, Lord, to be the source of the strength, the help, the light that we need. Strengthen our first responders, strengthen even our broadcast people, strengthen all of us whose lives have been devastated and disrupted, and give us the peace that passes all understanding. In Christ's name we pray, amen." The Christian Post reported Melvin, who recently had returned from self-quarantine, told Jakes, the lead pastor at the Potter's House in Dallas, that in times of crisis and uncertainty, a lot of Americans turn to faith. He played Jakes' remarks from Sunday. There has been all this discussion about whether we should have church or whether we should be in a building or not, and then we talk about what would Jesus do. I don't know, because Jesus never saw church. All of this stuff you made don't have nothing to do with power of God. It's not about a building. It's not about a building. It's never been about a building. There. That's all one word.
Yeah, the church is a building, but you don't have to be, and I know a lot of people say don't like this idea, but you don't have to be a Christian and attend a building for worship. If I remember my Bible, anytime 2 or 3 people got together and were discussing the Bible, they were at church. Whether it be outdoors or indoors, somebody's house or whatever, they were at church. Church had been convened. Today's rendition of a church is a building in which you have to go and worship, do your worship. It's not, if you go, it's not going to make you any better Christian than anybody else. I personally like to go because it gives me a chance, 2 things. Hear the word of the Lord and socialize a little bit with members of the community. And it's especially important to me because of when I got home from the POW camp. You gotta run. Run, Jim's gotta run.
I run.
Run. What? Anyway,
Wonder
when
where
I
it's going.
when I first got home from, I'll find out why I had to leave tomorrow. When I first got home from the POW camp, I was widely received back into my church and was even made trustee for 2 sessions, or 2 terms. So, the church means something to me, the fellowship in that church means something to me, even though I don't go every Sunday, okay? There are Sundays that I could have gone that I didn't go because of one thing or another. Most generally because I was too tired to get up and go, which is probably not the best reason for not going. But I don't want to get on to the church subject other than the fact that MSNBC is one of the biggest anti-Christian organizations out there, or I want to say trying to stomp on your freedom of religion, First Amendment rights. If you're a Christian, why, anything you say or do, mention the word Lord is offensive to me. Well, I find the fact that you find the Lord offensive to me, but that's your belief. You have the right to have that belief. As well as I have the right to have my belief, and I have the right to express my belief. And if you don't like the way I express it, you got 2 options. 1, don't listen. 2, don't look. Period.
I saw something funny on Facebook today that I wanted to bring up. It said Osama bin Laden was cooped up in a house with 3 wives for 5 years. How many of us believe that he actually called the Navy SEALs on himself?
I do. With 3 wives?
3 wives for 5 years.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that, Emmy. I had pushed the button, but apparently I didn't push it quite far enough into where it was making the proper contact. So, but it's in there now, and that. So, you know what? I'm running out of steam. I have a piece of news from Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania?
Yeah. On March the 19th, Second Amendment victory, Dems government backs off shutting down gun stores, World Net Daily. This is about Pennsylvania. Okay? First appeared on the Western Journal. On March 19th, when Pennsylvania Governor Tom Wolf issued an order for all non-life sustaining businesses to close to combat the spread of coronavirus pandemic, that list included gun shops. On March 23rd, deadline would be enforced with fines, loss of business license, and even jail time for those that refused, the WCAU reported. Turns out some refused. When the order came down, the lawsuit was quickly filed by a gun shop that refuted the governor's order. On March 22nd, it was quickly and just as quickly the Pennsylvania Supreme Court dismissed the lawsuit as moot. But that was not the end of the issue. Justice David Wedge, clearly sensing tension between the governor's order and those pesky constitutional rights, wrote a nimble dissent that 2 other justices joined. Wench began by affirming the obvious, that the inability of gun dealers to conduct regular business meant the complete prohibition of the sale of firearms. This amounts to an absolute indefinite prohibition upon the acquisition of firearms by the citizens of the Commonwealth. Wench pointed out a result is clear tension in Second Amendment of the United States Constitution and the Article 1, Section 21 of the Pennsylvania Constitution. In my view, Wench conducted it is incumbent upon the governor to make such manner of allowance for our citizens to continue to exercise this constitutional right. In other words, find a way for gun shops to remain open the good judge recommended, and the governor in turn did just that. So, Pennsylvania, we are under the close down all non-essential businesses, but in the case of the Second Amendment and the Article 1, Section 21 of the Pennsylvania Constitution, there was a prohibition of individual rights. And the courts, they dismissed the lawsuit, but they handed down a decision based on you can no do that. This is not yet communist of all Russias. So you can do that. People have the right to buy their firearm so that they can continue to defend themselves against the bad guys. So, anyway. Any comments from you, Mr. Grinnell?
No.
No.
I did see, I forget the exact statistic, but the number of firearms sold over the last,
Month of March,
like the month of March is like unprecedented.
3.5 million.
Yep, like it's the most in at that period of time, like in any time in history. Which I thought was telling. People scared. Oh, I wanted to tell you something. I was going to say this earlier. I was down at Molesky's the other day, and I'm late getting started, but I started picking up extra canned foods whenever I can when I go out. They're off-brand canned vegetables. They have cream corn, whole kernel corn, 2 different kinds of green beans, and peas. I forget the brand name, but it was like their off-brand, 59 cents a can, which I guess is not too bad.
No, I just have to wait for some more money to come in.
Yeah, me too.
And we do have some canned vegetables. We got green beans and we got corn, whole kernel corn. We got a few lima beans, and I thought one of my favorite is those big what they call butter beans. They're a big lima bean.
Those are disgusting.
Yes.
Those big beans are bastards. Big bean bastards.
Yeah. So anyway, I love them. Take them, boil them up, drain the water off, and then put butter on them and a little salt on top of them. Not that I should eat the salt, but anyway. And we have some green beans. We're out of yellow beans, but every time we go to the store, nobody's got any. So maybe they might have some.
Right.
Because there is a couple things that we need to get, and that. But as far as mainstaying canned food stuff, if worse comes to worse, and I couldn't get out of here to go anywhere, okay, the wife and I could eat pretty good for 6 months to a year.
Nice.
Okay.
Speaking of cooking stuff, I just remembered something one of my fraternity brothers used to cook. He would, those big hominy pieces of big chunks of corn. He would, after he'd pan fry his steak, towards the end he would slather it with some A1 sauce, steak sauce. Let it cook down a bit. Take the steak off, and then completely let it cook down, and then dump a can or 2 of that in that deglazed pan and heat that up together. Boy, howdy, that was good.
Yeah, to mix the flavors up into it to disguise the putrid of the thing. Speaking of cooking, my son cooked us dinner over an open fire yesterday. That's what I did yesterday, folks. Mother and I went up to the undisclosed location to decompress. We worked on the well. We found that the switch on the pump is bad, so we have to put a new switch in. So next week we'll be doing that. But we sat around the campfire all day, and my son cooked us some venison loins wrapped in bacon, marinated in some marinade sauce, and I can't think of the name of it. oh, was it ever so tasty. And, wrapped in bacon, cooked over an open fire, being marinated in sauce, what better can you get? And so, but anyway, we had a good time, and so anyway, what was I saying?
What were you talking about cooking?
Yeah, we were
Food.
talking about, I have boxes of beans that I bought back for Y2K. I sealed them up, I put them, what I did was when I first got them, I put them in the freezer. I left them there for about 6 months. And I took them out of the freezer and let them thaw out so that if there was any bug larvae in there, the freezer should kill it after 6 months. And so we have beans, and we've opened up a couple boxes of them, and they're just as good as the day we put them in there.
When you say boxes of beans, what do you mean by that?
Dry beans. Okay, dry beans. You buy in the can with all the sauce on it. These are just bean.
Oh, okay.
So you can boil it and you can make up, you can make your own ham soups. Or
I got you.
Okay?
I wasn't sure
They're
exactly.
dried beans is what they are. So we have 4 or 5 boxes. Then we have a couple bags of rice. And just the other day, we bought a 25-pound bag of oatmeal. Remember when you were telling about the rice? I decided between the rice and the oatmeal, I said, well, man, we already got some rice. Let's get some oatmeal. Because that works as a good anti-constipation thing, although...
It's good for your cholesterol, and
Yeah.
you can make a lot of stuff other than just oatmeal. I know.
Oh, yeah. Cake. My wife makes Swedish oatmeal cakes to kill for.
I never liked meatloaf until I tried Kathy's. My mother's was, it was edible, but it just didn't have a whole lot of flavor. Considering my father and his, whatever, won't go into that, but, and so when I first started coming over here before I went in the Army, I didn't want to be a picky eater. If it got put in front of you, you eat it. That's just out of respect. And I really enjoyed the oatmeal meatloaf versus the breadcrumbs that my mom would use. Now my wife makes some meatloaf. She uses breadcrumbs, but she mixes like a lot of Worcestershire sauce and other stuff with it. It's bang up good.
Yeah, there's all kinds of things you can do with the meatloaf. My mom used to use the breadcrumbs and a couple of eggs, but she mixed ketchup in the loaf itself.
Yeah.
And then while it was baking, she poured a bunch on the top, and it would get a nice thick layer of tomato flavoring on the top.
Which reminds me, when payday rolls around, I'm gonna give some of the local meat markets a call and see if they have any ham loaf mixed up.
Velasquez generally has some in their freezer. Okay, you know where the meat section is? The far end, before you turn to go to the ice cream, that freezer there, they usually have some packages of ham loaf. And it's pretty good ham loaf. I went to Mulaney's Meat Market. I shouldn't mention this. I went to Mulaney's Meat Market because I wanted to try their ham loaf. I will never buy ham loaf there again.
Didn't like it?
No. Did not like it. They had pre-mixed it with stuff and it was too damn sweet. It did not have the contrast between the glaze on the outside and the little tartness of the ham.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Gotcha. The Velasquez, okay.
Yeah, so Velasquez has it. In fact, I think I have a package in the freezer that I've been thinking about getting out and making up.
That's something that we have at our house a couple times a year. We usually get it from one of the meat markets, but
Yeah, I can't think of the name of it, but it's a brand name that they have frozen, pre-frozen, so,
we'll do.
yeah.
We've been going down to Valesky's quite a bit, Melissa and I, just because it's, she doesn't like going to Tops. Going all the way to Giant Eagle, like after work, we'll run down there. They've had, I haven't noticed, aside from like the paper products, like paper towels and stuff like that, most of their shelves are pretty well stocked.
Yeah, we were, before we knew there was a toilet paper shortage, my wife went to the dollar store to buy toilet paper. but she'd accidentally grabbed paper towels. Well, with the paper shortage going on, today is the 5th, right? Yeah. With the toilet paper shortage going on, and I know people say, well, you'll make the plumbers rich by using toilet paper. Well, I'm going to tell you something. If you don't use a whole sheet and wad it up into a gumball and use it like a folded sheet of toilet paper, you're not going to have that problem. But if you have that fussy of a sewer system, then put it in a plastic bag. And when you get a full bag, take it and burn it. Okay? But you'll at least have something. Well, anyway, go ahead.
Just from my own experience of burning shit in the desert, by all means, stay upwind.
So, anyway, we were getting ready to fill our little, my little toilet paper holder I have there, little outhouse. Well, when she went to do that, open up the package this Thursday. Oh no, I got paper towels. I said, well, how much toilet paper we got? She says, we got the roll that's on the dispenser and one roll in the outhouse. I said, well, tomorrow morning we'll get up and go do a search. We have plenty of paper towels because anticipating not being able to get toilet paper, and I use paper towels a lot. I picked up 4 rolls of paper towels. Now we have 5 rolls of paper towels. On bundles, not rolls, bundles. So we have like 50 rolls.
Jeez, please.
Okay, so anyway, we decided, well, we're going to go toilet paper shopping. We went down to the Dollar General down here on 322. They had toilet paper there, but they only had 4 rolls to a package. They were big rolls. They're like $3. So Kathy bought a couple rolls of that. And I said, well, how many did we get? We got 8. So that's not going to be enough. So let's go to Tops, because we wanted to get something at Tops. So I said, check Tops and see what they got. Well, she got the other thing. She come out, Tops had it, and they were selling it for $1 a roll. You can only have 1 roll. Okay, so she said she didn't buy it. So we went to the other dollar store there at the downtown mall, right next to the bistro. We went in there, and she comes out with 2 24-pack
Oh my goodness.
rolls of toilet paper. So we're good on ass cleaning equipment.
Something that I think we discussed this a couple weeks ago. One of the things you can do is the way they are making paper towels now, how they're like perforated at the half sheet versus full sheet. I saw where people are unrolling it, folding it over on top of itself, putting it in like a Tupperware container, and getting that bottles of baby wash and saturating with that. And it's kind of like baby wipes. If you get good soft enough paper towels, and that baby wipes, you can clean yourself. You can, it's not as efficient, but better than having a dirty, greasy cheeks, dirty hiney.
Before you start that, I gotta read this from Emmy. For the past 10 years, we have been preparing for the shift. I think she was trying to. Anyway, now that it has, we still aren't ready. And I think she was meaning shit, but it just came out SHTF.
Shit hit the fan.
Shit hit the fan.
S.
Yes, that's right. She capitalized. I'm sorry. Sometimes I'm a little slow at catching on to things.
Yeah, I have to ask my son a lot of times when I see these abbreviations.
Yeah.
Like the text.
Well, I should know because we're talking about, but I never use abbreviations.
No, I write everything out.
Yeah. So, yeah. I'm prepared. I now have 50-some rolls of toilet paper and about 50 rolls of paper towels. And so I ought to be good for about a year. Yeah, if I have to.
There you go. And you can always go out and you got trees on your property. You can always
I'll pick a few leaves.
Leaves are 3, let it be.
Yeah.
You don't want to start monkeying with that. All right, here's more anti-Trump stuff. School lesson promotes anti-Trump Chinese propaganda. Alright, a West Virginia middle school sent students an online lesson that accused Republicans of promoting discrimination against Asian Americans by referring to the coronavirus as a Chinese virus. Stephanie Laney, the parent of an 8th grader at Hurricane Middle School, sent me a copy of the assignment her daughter received in English class. They posted a link to the assignment. Like many students around the country, Stephanie's daughter is currently attending classes online due to the shutdown. The lesson was created by Nucella, an education-based organization that provides classroom content. The lesson focused on a story written by the Texas Tribune titled, Asian Americans Say Some Politicians Stoking Stigma with Coronavirus. Attached to the story was a quiz that included blatant anti-Trump and anti-Republican statements. Read the following claim, the lesson stated. Republican leaders have used insensitive language based on unfounded rumors when referring to the coronavirus. Which sentence from the article provides the best support for the above statement? Here are the choices. 1. His comment referenced a now debunked myth that the outbreak began after a woman in China ate bat soup. 2. Corin later said that he meant to say the Chinese government was to blame, not Chinese people or Chinese culture. Yet experts say that this kind of language encourages people to view the disease in simplistic geographic or racial terms. 4. When the Ebola outbreak emerged in 2014, Africans were the primary target of bias. Laney told me she could not believe the school would assign 8th graders such a politically charged lesson. I was speechless and completely appalled that the school system would allow this kind of garbage to be brainwashed into our kids. She told me she called the school superintendent in Putnam County and was assured the lesson would be removed and the teacher would be spoken to. I reached out to the superintendent via email and have yet to receive a reply. When I do, I will update the story with the superintendent's comments at the top of the story. That's about it.
It goes to show where the I don't want to be careful how I say this, but I want to be able to say it clear enough that people understand it. It goes to show you the hatred that the people in the educational system have for our way of government. Okay, I'm not just saying because of Trump. But he's the guy they're jumping on right now. They're using it as the example. But it shows their hatred for our form of government. And if they think our form of government is bad, why don't you go say China or go to the Soviet Unions or some of these other still communist countries and just see how bad it is here in the U.S. Not that it couldn't be better, because we're dealing with the attempt of the communists to take over our country. So, and we have the help. We have the help of the Democratic Party and the school system, whether it be through grade school, kindergarten through grade school to high school to college. These professors and teachers that are going to these brainwashing mills are coming back and they're pushing it on our children. That kind of stuff should never have been entered into the itinerary. But with this kind of itinerary, nobody sees it because it's on the computer, except for the student, unless the student is smart enough to know something, or the parent is watching them and helping them with the computer. It goes practically unnoticed. How many of these different types of educational blimps get through that go unnoticed, but plant the seeds of dissent, or contempt, I should say, for our type of government? Okay, your turn.
I don't want to do anything else.
Okay, we'll just sit here and look at each other.
That's horrible. Makes my stomach hurt. Apparently, I don't know how much you follow technology, but most cell phones now are at 4G, 4 gigabytes or whatever, but 5G is coming out. And it's starting to get more and more use. I guess there are lots of people that are concerned about the potential health risks caused by this 5G. To the point where people are now blaming the 5G for the spread of coronavirus. No, that is not.
It's just coincidental.
Very coincidental.
It's just coincidental that 5G was announced about the time the coronavirus outbreak started.
Yeah,
Now, that being said, there has been proof and evidence that the microwaves that are involved in the cell phones does cause problems with people.
yes.
Now, some people have a better resistance tolerance than others, but people are getting brain tumors, getting hard to hear, poor posture because they're walking like this, okay? And so it is having an adverse effect on our population. Are they doing this deliberately? Here comes the conspiracy mind in me. Are they doing this purposely? They're doing it so they can gain control over information because they can monitor your every whereabouts, everything you say, everything you do, especially with these new smartphones, where you can access a computer, you can buy online with them. You make your phone calls, it's got GPS in it, it sends a locator button, a beam to tell the satellite tracking device where you're at. Okay?
It even goes worse now. All the kids are getting those watches that are linked up with their phone.
Yeah, the smart watch, Dick Tracy watch. And so, is this all being done by design so that they can track everything you do? Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Why do you think they started a system called the cloud? And they encourage you to put your data, save it on the cloud. You know, just like this show could be saved on the cloud. No, screw you, I ain't saving it on the cloud. If somebody wants to put it there, that's too bad. That's their business. But I'm not saving it on the cloud. I'm saving it on YouTube where our website is, and I don't know if I'll have to go through and purge some of the previous shows or not. I don't know. We'll cross that when the time comes.
Yes. You know, is it by design, or is it what Bob Ross, the painter, would call a happy little accident? They figured out that once the technology was implemented, oh, yes, and then we can use it for our own nefarious. Because you know as well as I do that government, at least at most levels, is inept, bumbling nincompoops. And at certain levels, corporations are the same way. So to give governments and these corporations that much credit, I'm not sure I want to go there. But I guarantee there are powers that be above what we can even think of that's pulling strings that we can't even fathom. It's so, our heads would explode. And quite frankly, I'm not sure I even want to know.
Yeah, well, that's why you've heard of the group over meets in that hotel over in
The Illuminati and the Bilderbergers.
yeah, the Bilderbergers and
the Rothschilds and all these.
and the Council of Eight or Council of Nine or whatever, you know. The Bilderbergers are the top dogs. They're dictating with their policy. That's why they're always protected by guards carrying machine guns, okay? If you ever see any films of them being leaked out, wherever they go, they're always being protected by armed guards with machine guns.
And those are just the ones you see, not
Yeah.
not the advanced team that's up on roofs with sniper rifles and
Yeah.
and people have been cleared out of rooms and houses emptied.
So if these people feel they need that kind of security, just what are they up to?
Yeah, exactly.
What are they up to? They set the policy. They set what gold prices are going to be. They set what the inflation rate's going to be.
Control the oil flow here, there, and everywhere. Control which, and the kicker is, they don't care about which side wins in the wars because
They're invested in both sides.
Yeah.
So it don't matter.
A writer that I like to read, his name is Braveheart. He's written some books on the Freemasons and some of his other Illuminati stuff and the other secret societies that go along with, all the way back to Templar times and things of that nature. And he made the comment that once we know about a secret society, it's no longer a secret society. It's a society with secrets. The ones you
Don't know.
really want to know about are the ones that we don't know about. And once, like, people are always saying the Freemasons are behind this, that, or the other. And I'm sure at some level there's a lot of dirty shenanigans. But, like you said, once you know about it, it's no longer, it's now a society with secrets, not a secret society.
But you're right. It's not secret if somebody knows about it. Nothing's a secret if somebody knows about it. Okay, if I have something that's a secret and I tell you it's no longer a secret because now you know about it.
Yep.
And so,
The best way to keep a secret, don't tell nobody.
that's right. Keep your mouth shut. So, well, that leaves us with just 8 minutes. I don't want to get into another story, so let's just shoot the shit.
We're shooting the shit.
Got that one.
Shooting the shit.
Yeah.
My mother-in-law, who I bitched about, everyone bitches about their mother-in-law, she did something really decent. She is a high-end hoarder. She can't, in Linda's life, she could have a box of 100 pens. But if she goes to a store and sees pens on sale and she doesn't buy them, in her mind she's losing money. That's how she works. Well, she had bought, she lived by herself in a trailer down in Florida in a retirement community. But she still goes to Sam's Club and buys shit in bulk. Just stupid. In there, she had a huge amount of toilet paper and baby wipes and this, that, and the other. Well, she ran into a guy at one of the local dollar stores that was looking like he almost, he was despondent because he's got a lot of people living with him. He wears adult Depends, and he's been out of toilet paper for 2 weeks, and he everywhere, could not find it. So she's like, okay, you know where this place is, this restaurant thing at. Well, meet me there in 20 minutes. She went home and got several bundles of wipes and a big bag of toilet paper and gave it to him. He tried to give her money and this, that, and the other, and she's like, no, she wouldn't take it. That was the right and honorable thing to do.
That's the right thing to do, yeah.
And that's what she does. She will drive you to the point where you want to hold her under the swimming pool until she drowns. But then she does that one little thing. I think, all right.
There is some hope for her after all.
No, there's really not. But
Glimmer.
That's the kind of stuff that we need to do as a society. And what's going to happen when this is all over with? In a couple of months, we're going to go back to business as usual. We're going to forget about being nice to one another and helping each other out, and that's a shame. And we're all going to do it. I mean, it's just human nature. But look out for your neighbors, your friends, your relatives. Just ask, what can you do to help?
I have a question here that was sent to me by Emmy. She says, speaking of Easter, which is next Sunday, she wanted to know if we were going to do a show. I generally don't plan on doing a show on Easter Sunday, okay? But I'm not going to rule it out. It all depends on what transpires in our country the next several days. So all I can say is tune in at the starting time, and if we're there, we're there. If not, why, or not, but we will be there the week after. So
Maybe I will, maybe I won't, depending
well, yeah,
upon how
like I say,
things proceed.
it's depending on how bad things get.
Well, with where I work, I mentioned this off the air to Daryl and Randall when he was here. The facility I work in, I'm not going to give too much detail. They have built a COVID unit. They're stocking it. And they took volunteers amongst the nursing staff, and they'll staff it with RNs and then LPNs as need arise. Hopefully we won't need it. Hopefully my place of employment has spent all this money for nothing, which would be great. I wouldn't complain about that a bit. But with that being said, I volunteered to be one of the nurses that if the need arises, I will throw my hat in the ring to take care of the residents, and I will stop coming until after this is over, because I do not want to put anybody else at risk by anything that I might take out there.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, well,
that's why I just...
Yeah. And that's why I'm saying that I can't say there will be and I can't say there won't be. It's going to be based on what's going on at the time. If I feel it's a lot of important information that needs to be gone over, then I will come in and do it. Scotty is not contaminated. He can come if he wants.
Yep.
I don't know about Bones, but if nothing else, and it's only going to be me, I'll maybe do just a small show, maybe a half hour, just to go over the important facts. But if it's something a lot of importance, by then Scotty and I both will be here if he can.
Yep, I will be here if at all possible. If not, then I'll be safe. I jokingly say, being prior service and the some of the crazy shitholes I've lived in over the years, I'm immune to this.
Well,
I
don't say I lived in a bunch of shitholes, but I've had my tour of shitholes.
Yeah.
Okay.
I say it tongue-in-cheek.
Yeah.
It's probably going to bite me in the ass eventually, but...
Yeah. But, okay, guys, I don't have anything less to say about you.
Just get out there, check on, especially the older people in your life. So many of them are afraid to go to the store. Just, give them a call. Hey, I'm going to the store. Do you need, you can always grab a loaf of bread, half-gallon of milk, and some eggs.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Speaking of that, I told my son the other day I was have to go to town to get some milk and eggs and bread, because we buy milk, about 2 gallons of milk every 3 days or so. And he says, no, you're not. He says, I'll go get it. And so when he come home, or when he brought me out the eggs and the bread and the milk, I said, well, how much do I owe you? He says, not a damn thing. Keeping you alive is more important than the few dollars I spent on the groceries. But you don't have to be totally 100% boarded up in your house. You can get out and go walk around your yard. If you have a place that you can go that you're not going to be in contact with people, then go ahead and go, okay? If you're not going to be in contact, and if people should show up, maintain that 6 or 8 feet distance that they're talking about.
the fresh air will do your body good.
Yeah, fresh air will do your body good. A little bit of exercise will do you good, and just getting out will do your morale a hell of a good boost. That's what I did. I went up to the mountains, got away from all this crap, built a fire, and sat around and fed the fire wood all day, and did a little bit of work, and just no radio, no TV for 7 hours. 7 hours I sat by that fire.
That's funny. All right, 8 o'clock. I'm done.
Okay, all right, we're done. Okay, kids, maybe we'll see you next week. All I can say is tune in and see if we're there. Thank you and good night.